I've added loads of items to Minecraft, and I've even made tutorials on how to do it yourself. But the question that I often get asked is, hey admin, I've followed your tutorials and I've now made a custom item. But, now, how do I make a recipe for it? Unfortunately, the answer is a bit more complicated than just make the recipe. So in this tutorial, I'll be explaining all the steps needed to create a custom recipe. Before jumping into the tutorial, it is worth explaining why creating a recipe for a custom item is a problem in need of a multiple step solution. Well, in Minecraft Update 1.13, they gave us the ability to add custom recipes to Minecraft. However, while we can use their system to add recipes for any item already in the game, you can't use it to make a recipe for items that need custom NBT, such as any custom item that we add. So this tutorial will explain the best roundabout method we can use to kind of create a custom recipe. Before we jump into each individual step of the process, I think it's a good idea to get a more zoomed out general overview of the overall concept so that you have a better understanding of what the purpose of each step actually is. The overall idea is that if you craft an item that you don't already have the recipe unlocked for, you will get the recipe unlocked. And the reason why this is valuable is because there are advancements with the condition of unlocking a recipe. So you could create an advancement for unlocking the oak plank recipe, like we just did, and we can have it give a reward of running a function. So if we take that idea and we instead make our recipe for a dummy item, typically we use a knowledge book in the Datapack community, well then, if we were to craft that knowledge book, we would know what recipe was used to craft it, and we can then remove the knowledge book from your inventory and replace it with the custom item. Step 1. Creating your custom recipe. For the sake of this tutorial, we're going to be creating a recipe for this red emerald item that was added in my previous tutorial, the how to add custom items to Minecraft tutorial. And so in that tutorial, we made this red emerald that has the name of red emerald and has a texture that is definitely red. And yeah, it just has some custom model data of 1 and the display name of red emerald. So our first step is going to be to create a recipe for this item. I think I'm going to go with an emerald surrounded by red dye. Funny enough, this first step actually uses the recipe generator that I mentioned earlier. Obviously you don't have to do it this way, but you might as well. So I have that linked in the video's description as the top link. So let's just grab an emerald and grab some dye, and let's just do a recipe like this so that it takes less time. As I mentioned earlier, we won't be putting the custom item in the output slot. Instead, we're actually going to put a knowledge book. So this is going to be our custom recipe. And we can click either the download JSON file button or the download Datapack button file. Either of them will work, we just need to download the file. Once you have that downloaded, go to your Datapack. In this case, I'm going to be calling it the Custom Recipes Tutorial Datapack. And make sure you have a pack.mc meta. I have another tutorial on how to set up a Datapack, so if you don't know how to do that, definitely click on the card in the top right. But navigate to your data folder, and then your pack name. In this case, we're going to go with was.tutorial. This is an important name, so keep that in mind. And then you will want to create these 4 folders. For now, we only need the recipes folder, but in the future, we will need the loot tables folder, the functions folder, and the advancements folder. So you might as well create them all now. From here, we're going to want to take the crafting recipe that we downloaded and put it into our recipes folder and give it a name while we're at it. So in this case, I'm going to call it red emerald. I should probably open up this file just to show you what's inside of it. So this is a Minecraft recipe file. You basically just have the pattern here, which is pretty much the exact same as what the website was showing us. And then you have a key, which tells us that these hashes mean that it should be red dye there, and then the E should be an emerald. And then we finally just have the result, and in this case it is a knowledge book, and with a count of 1. So pretty straightforward. You don't really have to edit these files, but if you wanted to edit this file to make your recipes, that I have found can actually be faster than using the generator if you know what you're doing. And that is technically the end of step 1. So now that we've done everything correctly, we can try our recipe in game, and you'll see that if we give it the red dye and the emerald, we can craft a knowledge book. Now, I would highly recommend not clicking on this recipe, because if you do, you're going to unlock the recipe, as we see here. The next time we do this recipe, we will not unlock the recipe, right? And that's going to potentially cause issues in step 2. So if you did click on the recipe, you're going to want to run recipe take @self and then the name of your pack. So in this case, was.tutorial, but that would be whatever yours is, and then the name of the recipe. So if you take this away from yourself and then you put in the recipe again, this time you will unlock the recipe again. And again, that is going to be used for step 2, the advancement detecting when you unlock a recipe. If your recipe is not working, there are 2 common issues that could happen here. The first is you might have a typo inside of your recipe file, or the generator messed up in some way. So definitely check for that. Compare it to the file that I had up earlier in the video. You can also type out what you think the recipe's name should be. So if you start typing was.tutorial, red emerald shows up, which tells me that it's a valid recipe. So maybe you've just gotten your recipe the wrong way around or something, and you're just making a little mistake there. And if that's the case, then the recipe will still show up by just typing it out. Step 2, creating the detection advancement. Now that we've created the base recipe that will be used to craft our custom item, the next step is going to be to create a detection advancement for when we unlock the actual recipe. To create that advancement, I highly recommend using Mizode's advancement generator. It will be linked as the second link in the video's description. So to use this tool, we're going to start by setting a requirement of the recipe unlocked. So that's just, if you scroll down a bit, it will be right there. And then we're going to add a condition to it. This condition is going to be the name of our recipe. If you recall in game, we already typed out the name of our recipe. This was was.tutorial red emerald. So we can just copy this from here and over in the advancement generator, just paste it here. And that would technically trigger every time you unlock the recipe. So now we just need something to happen when we trigger this advancement. So if we click the rewards button, we can add a function here. And to keep things clean, we can actually just use the exact same name and everything for this function. So in this case, what's going to happen is when we unlock a recipe, and that recipe is the red emerald, we are going to be rewarded by running this function that is found in the Datapack called red emerald. We don't currently have this function, but when we do, it is going to get triggered. So we can download this by clicking the download button and then place it into our Datapack. So back in our Datapack, we'll want to navigate to data, was.tutorial, and then go to the advancements folder that you likely created earlier. We can grab the download that we had and paste it in here, and we needed to call it red emerald as well. I think technically we could call this whatever we want, but we should just keep all of our names the same. It will help with organization when you have multiple recipes down the road. And we can look inside of the red emerald advancement. It is exactly what was being displayed on the website, of course. And so the next step is going to be to create this red emerald function. But before we do that, we should quickly bug test to make sure everything is working as intended. So if we reload our Datapack and we run /advancement grant @self only, and then it was was.tutorial.red emerald, we'll see that our advancement does in fact exist. and we can give it to ourselves if we wanted to. We can also take it away using revoke. And because of that, that means if we were to craft this, again, I would not recommend crafting it until our final step is set up. But if you were to do this, we're going to unlock the recipe here. And then you'll also find that if we ran the grant, it's going to tell us that you can't grant the advancement because we already have it. That means that our advancement did successfully trigger. If it did not trigger, we would have been able to grant it to ourselves. And now we can revoke it. And then we'd also need to forget the recipe that we just crafted, and then this would all be reset. If your advancement is not showing up, make sure that you have the correct recipe path. So make sure that when you search for your recipe, that you're having this exact path be inside of your advancement's recipe condition area. And then also make sure that when you're going to revoke your advancement, that it shows up with the name that you're expecting, or that it even just shows up at all. And check for typos inside of your advancement file itself. If you use the generator, it's very unlikely that they exist, but if there are any, you'll want to spot them and crush them. Step 3, creating your recipe's function. So now that we have our recipe and our function, our next step is to have the actual function that our advancement is running when you craft the item. So let's create that real quick. Inside of our Datapack, we're going to want to navigate to the tutorial folder again, go to the functions folder that you probably already created. If not, create a functions folder. And then inside of this, we're going to want to create a new text file. And we're going to call this, this would be red emerald, or whatever the name of your item is that you are wanting to craft. And then we're going to want this to be a .mc function. And Windows is going to warn us that it might become unusable, but that is not correct. If we look at a recipe that is found inside of my data packs, this one for the axe crafter, you'll see that we need to do 4 things inside of our red emerald. Those are, we're going to need to get rid of the knowledge book. So that's very simple. We can just clear it from our inventory. So we run a clear command. We do it as the player because this function gets run as the player that is doing the crafting. We're clearing the knowledge book, and we only need to get rid of 1 of them. We're also going to run a loot command. This we currently do not have set up, so that's going to be in the next step. And then we're going to need to remove the advancement that we already have, and then we also need to take the recipe from ourselves. What's interesting is we've actually already done both of these commands. So we already ran the recipe take tutorial command, and we already also ran the advancement revoke command. So that means if we go to our red emerald file and we just grab those 2 commands, we put them in here. And by the way, the order on this does not matter at all. As long as they're all in here, this will work. And we can currently test that by just having it say hi. So if we reload that and we craft our red emerald again, this time what's going to happen is that we're going to lose one of our recipe books. We had 2 of them, so it didn't look quite great, but you'll see in chat we have it say hi, and in theory we should be able to do this again. And so that time, yeah, that's working. So as the player that did the recipe, we're now able to run a command. And if you know anything about commands, you know that being able to run a command when a certain condition is met is pretty much the most powerful thing possible. Also, if you know a little bit about commands, you might think that we could just, give ourselves an item, right? In this case, like the emerald. And this does technically work. However, it's not perfect. And because of that, we're going to instead want to use a loot table. If you're curious, this method has a popping sound effect that gets played no matter what, and it also isn't particularly great in a couple other situations. So instead, we're going to want to set up a loot table. But before we get to that, let's look at some common issues for step 3. If you've made it to step 3, we know that your advancement and your recipe already exist. So most likely whatever issues you have are going to be related to the function that you just created. So we can run /function and then make sure that this red emerald function actually exists. If it does not exist, then you have a problem. You're going to want to make sure that the path is correct for your functions folder. This is functions as in plural. And so if that's not correct, this will not show up. And then make sure that the name of your function is in fact correct. And then also that it's a .mc function, spelled correctly, of course. If you tried crafting the recipe and your function does exist and you're positive that your advancements exist, there's a chance that you just have your advancement or recipe already unlocked, and by simply running the function and then crafting the item, it could work. That would be due to not being able to unlock an advancement that you already have unlocked. And if you're positive that you have the advancement and the function, but it's not running the function, when you unlock the advancement, which you could double check by doing an advancement grant and then granting yourself the function. When this happens, you'll see that it will say hi because I triggered the recipe. If that is not happening, you're going to want to check your advancement and check the function part, the reward part, right? If the reward part does not match up to the function we created, if there's a typo with your name or your path, that would cause the issue that you're seeing right there. Step 4, creating the custom items loot table. So assuming that that is all working, we are good to move on to step 4. In this final step, we're going to be taking the NBT of our custom item. So in this case, the red emerald, that's just a display name and a custom model data. And we're going to be creating a loot table with this data so that we can have that be part of the output. So we're going to want to grab this part of the data and ignore the emerald for now, and then jump over to another one of Mizode's generators. This one, of course, being the loot table generator, because we are in fact in need of a loot table. So this is actually remarkably simple what we're wanting to do here. So in this case, we're just going to set it to, instead of generating a stone, we're going to generate an emerald. And so now this loot table is for an emerald. But then we're going to set a function on this, and we're going to have this be set NBT. This one right here. And then we just simply paste in the NBT of our custom item into this field right here. And the reason why we're wanting to do this is because in a loot table, every parentheses needs to be escaped with a backslash. And this is a little bit annoying to do by hand, so we can just use a generator to do our job for us. So if we download that, we can put it into our Datapack. So grab the file that you downloaded, go to your loot tables folder, that is loot tables plural, and then paste it in here and rename it to whatever the name of your recipe is. In this case, of course, it is red emerald, because that is the name we've been with this entire time. And we can open up this file and see that it does in fact contain all of the NBT that we had on the item. So we have the display name, we have it being called a red emerald, and we also have the custom model data, except we have these backslashes to escape quotation marks, because for some reason you have to do that inside of a loot table. I don't know why, but you just do. Back in Minecraft, if we run a loot give at self loot and then was tutorial red emerald, you'll see when we run this, it increases the amount of red emeralds we have. And so that's pretty much all there is to it. We're going to grab this command and we're going to jump over to our function, and we're simply just going to add it. So now if we run this recipe and we grab our knowledge book, nothing will happen because I didn't reload. But once we reload and we try it again, this time we will get our custom item. And you can even stack craft and get multiple. And yeah, it basically just works exactly as you would expect. We can get 16 of them, and it works just fine. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to this tutorial. In theory, if you've done everything correctly, you haven't had to write a single bit of code yourself because we've been able to use a generator for everything, except the function. But for the function, we're just copy pasting, so should be pretty straightforward. In terms of common issues for step 4, most likely the only two potential issues could be typos that you made, either with your loot table's name itself or inside of the loot table. So if we have a typo in here, such as not properly escaping the quotation marks for some reason, that would cause an issue. So make sure that that's all set up correctly. By the way, to escape a quotation mark on the left side of the first quotation mark, you put a backslash, and on the left side of the inner quotation mark, you would also put a backslash. So yeah, it's basically just always to the left of a quotation mark. So that was my tutorial on how to add custom recipes to Minecraft using the knowledge book method. And yeah, if Mojang ever makes a better method to add these custom recipes, I will make sure to update a pinned comment on this video and the video's description. But that is all I have for this video. Anyway, if you found this video useful, make sure to leave a like on it. Hit that subscribe button if you're wanting to learn more about the Datapack creation side of things. And I'll see you guys all in the very next video. So thanks for watching.